So I'm not gonna lie, initially I didn't really know how to feel about us returning to the Xianzhou Laofu. However, as time went on and as I started seeing more and more content and more things about, like trailers, what was gonna happen in the story, as I overanalyzed everything like I kind of tend to do, I started getting a lot more hyped, specifically because I knew that Yanqing was gonna get even more character development. And genuinely speaking, I was like very hyped because one of my first videos that started doing well was when I used Yanqing in a YouTube thumbnail, saying that he was like a perfect character. Not in the way that many people think, but no, I legitimately did talk about Yanqing in that video, and it's kind of what has stemmed this kind of curiosity and joy for making these sort of YouTube videos. So yeah, when I realized that he was going to get more content, more development, more like story arcs that were actually going to be really focused on him and relevant to him, I was so hyped, I was so happy, and I became really eager to see how things would go. And needless to say, like, this new story delivered, and especially because of the introduction of Yunli, which I personally believe is really good for Yanqing's growth. So I want to go through this video about how opposite they are, but how that really helps in complementing both of their halves together. Because while they do have some similarities within one another, like both of them adoring swords, both of them being the apprentices of a Cloud Knight general, there's still a lot of things that they clash in, and that's good. That's perfect. That actually develops their character a lot, and it's also the reason why so many people have shipped them, which blows my mind. I mean, I know that they are together in a different timeline, but still, like, it's just really nice to see that there are actually things where they're synergized well, both in the fact that they think the same and in the fact that they don't think the same. So, yeah, with that being said, let us see why Yanqing and Yunli are perfect opposites. I want to start things off by going over Yanqing and Yunli's style of gameplay, in particular because I am genuinely a huge fan of the fact that the game developers translated both of these characters' beliefs, the way that they manage their sword, the way that they prefer to fight in combat within the lore of the game, and then translated it perfectly into their gameplay kits whenever you're fighting enemies in like Memory of Chaos, Perfection, wherever you choose to bring them in. It really does feel like their own ideals are reflected through their gameplay. Like, let me explain, right? In Yanqing's case, we know that he doesn't want to get hit. We know that he's someone that prioritizes being nimble, being quick, having really good technique in order to excel and overpower enemies. On the other hand, we have Yunli, which is a character that wants to get attacked, because that essentially allows her to get an opening to deal massive damage onto one opponent. In here, we literally see how both Yanqing, just like in the story, says that he focuses on speed, while Yunli prefers to much rather focus on strength. And this might just be a little bit of a stretch, but something that I noticed that I personally have become a huge fan of is the way that you build both of these characters. Yanqing's passive talent, One with the Sword, essentially enables him to use Soul Steel Sync to the best of his potential. While having Soul Steel Sync, Yanqing will be less likely to be attacked by enemies, his crit rate will be increased as well as his crit damage. However, that is without taking into account the fact that Yanqing's ultimate, amidst the Reigning Bliss, increases Yanqing's crit rate by a fixed 60%, which in all honesty is absolutely insane. And on top of that, if he was to be in Soul Steel Sync, he then gains an additional 30 to 54% crit damage. And in all honesty, that is absolutely wild, because just taking into account his own talents and ultimate, and the 5% crit rate that you get for free, this essentially means that this character could have around, I want to say, like 90% crit rate just existing. Right? So in theory, you don't have to build more crit rate, aka more speed and more technique, into Yanqing. Vice versa, we have Yunli, a character that, once again, is focused on getting hit, But when we look at her own kit, we see the following. Whenever Yunli uses her ultimate, she will enter a parry state and taunt all enemies. And in my opinion, this is one of the most fun mechanics because on top of, guaranteeing the fact that the enemy will attack you, she then increases her crit damage up to 100%. Which, in my opinion, that is absolutely crazy. But that's the main thing, right? That massive increase in crit damage incentivizes you on building crit rate onto Yunli because she already has enough power and strength. She just needs to make up for it in technique and speed. And that is something that I just personally have adored so freaking much about these characters, is how flavorful they are as a whole. Like, going even further, right? Since we're talking about Yunli in the current moment, her ultimate becomes so much more powerful if you actually do get hit, because if you don't get hit, you unleash Intuit Slash, which deals physical damage to a single enemy and adjacent ones. However, if you were to get hit when you are in your parry state, instead of using Intuit Slash, you use Intuit Call, which does the same thing except it additionally does 6 instances of damage to a singular random opponent. And that is busted. The scaling on this ability essentially makes it so that you are missing like double the amount of the base hit on the on the main character if you were to not use this passive. I know I'm jumbling up my words because I really do not know how to phrase it, but you're missing on a lot of damage if you do not get an Intuit Call, and vice versa. This is kind of like the same problem that Yanqing has. If he does get hit, then he gets massively nerfed because he loses access to his crit rate, some crit damage, and a lot of crit damage in his ultimate. As a whole, they both have what the other one lacks, and that just makes it that much more freaking beautiful that they contrast, and that it just makes me adore their characters so much more. During the 2.4 story quest, we were introduced to Yunli, which, in my opinion, her first appearance was really cool. She appears absolutely destroying the hell out of some Borison, and then she proceeds to steal Yanqing's sword, which a little bit fucked up. They have their own reasons, but a little bit fucked up. My poor boy Yanqing just keeps gathering L's like they are just being given for free. And I feel really bad for it just makes me sad to see him be sad, But at the same time, something really interesting came up to my mind when I saw this cutscene in particular, right? Because we do see Yunli taking away the sword, but Yanqing's swords kind of have a mind of their own. Let me explain. As we know from his own idle animation, there's one of sometimes his swords just decide to do whatever they want, and they will poke him. For some reason, his own swords just decide to not obey him at times, right? And vice versa. There was also the moment in the Huayian event. I don't remember. It was the whole fixed troll garden with Cirrus. There was one storyline where Yanqing gets possessed by a Heliobi, where he wanted to be a massive warrior and such. I don't exactly recall the story. I'm trying to my best, but the TLDR is Yanqing got possessed. Su Shang fends him off and is able to survive the onslaught of attacks that Yanqing dishes out at her, which honestly, props to Yanqing. I actually want to see Su Shang in the Warden's event, even though I don't think that would be possible. Regardless, no, yeah, Su Shang is now, it's from a different ship, so maybe I'm getting sidetracked. But the thing is, right? During the Huayian event, one of the swords, is calling for aid for us to help Yanqing, right? So that means that Yanqing swords do have some sort of autonomy to them. So I kind of am inclined to believe that the sword decided to get captured and then started talking badly about Yanqing on purpose. One, to bother Yanqing, and two, because it's playing a little bit of matchmaker like the community is. I'm not really sure. I just find it kind of interesting that the sword decided to not come back. And I know that there's a cutscene, not a cutscene, but like a dialogue moment where Yunli says that the poor sword was like afraid of Yanqing. So I'm very intrigued by that. I really do want to know, but I also might have a little bit of a theory on as to what, and it's the following, right? Throughout the storyline, one of the comments that Yunli makes to Yanqing and that she criticizes him on is that she says that he's very shaky, that he doesn't have focus, that he's unable to actually perform well in combat because there's something else that's like bothering him. That's why his swords aren't landing, that's why his technique isn't good. And in all honesty, I feel like we kind of see that throughout the battle that the two of them have. Like, for example, there was a moment where Yanqing slipped from the roof and fell and only managed to survive, I'm pretty sure, because his sword picked him up because his freaking swords can fly. There was another point where he's flying, having a massive advantage over Yunli, and allows himself to get caught by Yunli's like claymore that gets like yeeted into the skies above. By all intents and purposes, like, he shouldn't be losing like this, and he shouldn't be letting himself be caught so off guard, but he does, because there's something clouding his mind. And you only essentially tell him like, hey, your sword literally is telling me that you are not performing well. And that's where probably her own criticism of like, you don't deserve the sword because you're not giving it justice, you're not actually doing what you should be doing. If you go into combat with the sword, there's a risk that you are endangering yourself, and as such, you're endangering the sword. So, when later in the story, Yanqing literally mentions that he has had doubts ever since he got wrecked by Jing Liu, it just hit that much harder. He mentions how for the first time his attack got like destroyed and he was in serious danger, that he was afraid of death, that he was scared for his life. And that just feels so powerful as a narrative that it makes me appreciate Yanqing that much more. And he even like admits, he was like, as of recently, I've had a lot of losses, and I want to improve. I want to actually like do better. I know that these are the things that are like hindering me down, but I know where I must improve. And narratively speaking, that is just beautiful. Also, there's just the fact that, again, like, this kind of like lack of focus is also translated into his hit, as we mentioned before, because whenever he gets hit, he loses the Soul Steel Sync passive, and therefore just is unable to do that much damage anymore. This does bring me to my next point, which is, as a whole, we know that the plotline of the War Dance is that it's a sort of tournament arc, and in this arc, both Jin Yuan and Huayian have given as a sort of like duty to both of these Cloud Knights that they have to train an apprentice and have them participate within the contest in order for them to at least win one singular combat. Which is why we get the storyline of, March 7th now following the Path of the Hunt. And in all honesty, this is one of my favorite things because we kind of see both of their perspectives on the topic, right? Because Yanqing feels insecure about his own sword technique. He even tells Jin Yuan, hey, like, if I didn't even graduate as a swords master, how am I to teach? And Jin Yuan reinforces him and tells him, hey, like, looking at things from a different perspective might actually help you, and like, I believe in you, like, you got this, and encourages him further. While on the other hand, Yunli is kind of like, why do I have to do this? Like, I know my strengths, and Huayian is like, hey, take this as an opportunity to also improve. And like, like, he knocks her down a peg. Like, Huayian knocks her down a peg, but also still is encouraging and wanting her to grow. And it makes me so happy that this is like a plot point in the current storyline. This is where I want to start going over both of these characters as masters, because genuinely speaking, those cutscenes and like the storyline was honestly really, really interesting. Because as we mentioned before, both of them have their own teaching methods, and both really do need to work better on their words because they're not really good at communicating. Yanqing wants to focus on what March is already good at, speed, because that is what he focuses on. Yunli wants to focus on what March 7th lacks, which is strength, which is what she focuses on. But beyond all that, it also kind of feels like that is really on par with how they are as characters. Yunli knows where she lacks and she wants to improve on those areas. Yanqing is afraid of moving into other areas and as such prefers to just hone the one ability that he has and then over time start improving on the other ones, which also really feels like it's perfect to just tell the narrative of his insecurity. And then Yao Qiu appears for a quick moment, which it's so weird to say that, by the way, because Yanqing and Yunli are kind of in the same category because they're both apprentices to the generals, and Zhao Qiu is kind of in the same boat, not because he's an apprentice, but because he's Fei Xiao's retainer. And I genuinely do adore how even him appearing with his vast amount of knowledge and experience is able to give insightful words to both of these characters to allow them to grow and better teach March. He compares both their teachings to a sort of cooking analogy, which a little bit confusing, but honestly so accurate and really good. Personally, one of my favorite moments in that storyline. But without getting distracted, right? It just makes me appreciate more this dynamic of masters that both of them have going on to them, right? Because it kind of shows that they both can actually learn from each other. I also want to take this moment to give a little bit of appreciation, right, to both Huayian and Jing Yuan for being essentially the masters of the current masters that we have, because these two, essentially children, because that's what they are, didn't really have any parents. Yunli's parents died when she was very, very young, and I'm pretty sure Yanqing didn't actually get to see his own family. They both grew with their retainers, and while Huayan is a direct family member of Yunli, that cannot be said for Jin Yuan and Yanqing. And I do feel even though, right, there's the family bond between Yunli and Huayan, something that both of these characters have is a lot of respect for them, right? Both Yanqing and Yunli respect their masters to the point that they kind of overwork themselves, I feel, and then these guys have to be the voice of reason. As a whole, it just feels really nice to see that these people that were not only their mentors but also their paternal figures being those that want to see them succeed, that they know that they're putting their quote-unquote children into the the War Dance Festival tournament thing, and they want to see them succeed, so they're both doing their best in order to see this be something that they can achieve. At the same time, right, we also have the fact that in the story, Jin Yuan tells Yanqing, hey, go resolve this dispute. It's more of a words kind of thing, but you do need to be able to be versatile in communication in order to be a good Cloud Knight and a good soldier, a good general. If he wants to further his career, he needs to improve in that regard. Vice versa, Huayan knows the weaknesses that Yunli has, and as such is the reason why he brought her along into the Xianzhou Laofu, because she's still missing actually knowing more about the outside world, about a different culture, because the Xianzhou Zhuming and the Xianzhou Laofu are completely different. For a quick moment, I forgot the Zhuming's name, so that was a my bad. But yeah, it kind of helps broaden her horizons. And well, at the very beginning of the quest, Yunli had a bit of an attitude that some people I know kind of felt it was a bit annoying. I feel it's kind of fitting for the character that she is, both in her own trailer as well as in her own light cone. We see that she has some sort of cat attitudes behind her, right? Like she behaves sort of like a cat. And I say this mainly because it feels like she's a character that was raised, like she was raised more on the streets than in an actual house. Like Huayian probably had general duties to take care of, so Yunli probably just ended up working her way outside, while also, taking her own time to train. As a matter of fact, even something extra that I just remembered, there was a voice line that she says that, Yunli did work really hard, but whenever she was actually tired, she would just disappear and nobody would find her because she's very sneaky like that. Because she's just very street smart. She just hasn't left that bubble that she has been raised in, and doesn't really know what the like grand scheme of things is. She doesn't know like the full broad world, and that is what Huayian is like teaching her, and that is incredibly cool. And right now, I just want to make like this video to compare both of those characters. I will be going more in depth. I'm planning on actually going an in-depth analysis on both of these characters once this continuance quest ends, because I want to see them both fully grow and develop, and then make an analysis both on how they were before the quest started and after the quest started. Mainly on Yanqing, because there's some like the video has been overdue on Yanqing, and I appreciate him so much, and I'm just so happy that he's grown. I don't know. This event has brought me so much happiness purely because it's a Yanqing event. So yeah, with that being said, thank you very much for reaching all the way up to this point into the video. It really does mean a lot to me. I know I might have yapped a bit too much, but I really do appreciate that you've been like able to be here. If you have some sort of feedback on these videos, by all means, go ahead. I know that this video is not one that I have actually like scripted, but I did have a lot of fun kind of like investigating these things, and I do want to see if I can improve like my editing style a little bit. So we're testing new waters, right? At the same time, just real quick, hey, if you haven't subscribed, be sure to do so. It's free, it only takes a second, and if you ever feel like my quality of content is not up to par with your expectations, you are more than welcome to unsubscribe. I want to be able to produce better and better content as time moves on. So right now, I'm currently making assets, and that's taken a little bit of time, but it's a lot of fun. I want to begin streaming again, and I'm gonna try to do something funny and unique for like a weekly stream. More details on that later, but I'm cooking something up that is gonna make me suffer. But regardless, I really appreciate that you're hearing me yap, even more than I am, and I'm making this outro way longer than it should be. So with that being said, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you all. Have a great night, morning, afternoon, whatever time zone you're currently watching this video through. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye. And thank you for helping me reach over 2,500 subscribers. And now for real. Bye.